U.S. intelligence agencies have released a report on COVID-19 origins tracing. The report says the virus was not developed as a biological weapon, but most agencies remain divided over two hypotheses: natural exposure to an infected animal or a laboratory-associated incident. Sean Calebs has more.
An unclassified version of this report was made public here in the U.S. just hours ago. Now, some members of the U.S. research team believe the virus started in a Chinese lab in Wuhan. Still, others of this team contend it occurred more organically, jumping from animal to person. Meanwhile, the United States, bitter arguments erupted last year here when former U.S. President Donald Trump began a public campaign stating categorically that the COVID-19 virus began in a Chinese lab. Now, Democrats in the U.S. argue that Trump was just trying to dodge critics who were railing against him for wildly mismanaging the outbreak. Now, for its part, China is decrying this report and dismissing allegations that Beijing has not been upfront and helpful in the scientific study. China has said its position on the global origins of the virus has always been clear and consistent. China says it will continue to support scientific studies and remains concerned about politicized research it believes cherry-picked information. Now, Beijing is also siding with a World Health Organization report that came out this year saying COVID-19 most likely began with the virus jumping from animal to person, and then it was highly, highly unlikely it was caused in a lab in Wuhan.
For more on that, let's cross live to our reporter Zhou Jiaxing in Beijing. Jiaxing, you've been following this very closely. What's China's reaction to this U.S. intelligence report?
As pointed, the two possibilities that the U.S. intelligence report highlights were actually included in a March report by experts from WHO in China on Wuhan mission. And after their fieldwork at wet markets, labs, and hospitals early this year, they concluded that the natural origins very likely, while the lab origins extremely unlikely. So the unclassified report from the U.S. further judges that the virus was not developed as a biological weapon, not genetically engineered, adding some other agencies involved believe that there was not sufficient evidence to make assessment at the moment. And that's why virologists I previously spoke with did not expect that the report would really bring in any new information, and they believe that it will be a rehash of the evidence that's been available until now. Some of them argue that the Biden administration was doing this in order to satisfy internal political pressures to try to diffuse some of the pressures coming from element of the Republican Party. And the Chinese embassy in the United States said in a statement that the report is not scientifically credible, adding that the U.S. claims of China's lack of transparency an excuse for Washington's politicizing and stigmatizing campaign. On the raw data issues, leaders on the WHO Wuhan mission made it clear about the international practice that there are restrictions on privacy law that forbid the sharing of data, including details to outsiders, and that's exactly the same in most countries in the world, which has been reflected in their previous studies. Atop that, Chinese side presented the early 174 cases one by one to the WHO experts in Wuhan, and experts from the international team recognized that effort and expressed their pride in the Phase 1 report. Michael Ryan, the executive director of the WHO Health Emergency Program, said he is confident that his Chinese colleagues are very much willing to cooperate on the scientific studies that are needed to further explore the origins. Now, scientists say the next step is to seek earliest evidence of the virus, and they take antibodies in samples found before the Wuhan outbreak in various places as a key indicator, and they call on scientists and politicians to join forces to expedite the next phase of traceback research. And Beijing says it is always willing to support and join the scientific studies, but opposing the political manipulation.